school not well today, so I've got a hard stop at 2.
Oh yeah, no worries. If something happens, then family first, mate, always. Sorry, everybody, that was just me and Dan discussing. If you have kids, you know what it's like. They don't have a schedule. Certainly not when it comes to being sick or healthy. So we may have to cut this short, everybody, just so you know. Okay. With that, today I'm really happy to introduce Dan. We had met our friend of ours, Mr. Fisher, and he'd suggested that we get together to have a chat because for me, Ask a Leader is nothing other than demonstrating when people have actually done leadership, got the t-shirt plus the scars, then they can actually talk about it. And as you can see with the 9 questions I always tend to ask, they're always the same thing, but the person that obviously I'm talking to is definitely different. And with that, Dan, I suppose, would you like to give us a little bit about your background that you'd like to share? Up to you what you share. Yeah, free mic.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on, Gavin. Really appreciate it. I'm Dan Wright. I'm Scouse, in case you can't tell. And I'm probably not similar to most of the people on here in that I'm currently a stay-at-home dad, and that's what I do. But that was a recent phenomenon that was enabled by nearly a decade of my entrepreneurial journey. So I left Liverpool nearly 20 years ago, went to an engineering company to work in their IT department, a very large company in the FTSE 100, and progressed through the project program management career path. So running large IT projects, then programs, and then ultimately running their portfolio projects, which was definitely my first introduction to proper leadership. Because when you're trying to lead people who aren't actually your reports, that's an interesting challenge. It's, the influence and the communicating, the, bringing people on board with the vision. So that was a really vital part of the person I am today. And that loads. And then eventually I left and set up a consultancy. Started with me in my spare room, and then I ran it for, I think, 7 years. And it was my baby. But then I had a baby. My wife did. We did, and my son.
You mean you got the real one?
Yeah, that's it. It happened for real. And when my son came along, all of my priorities completely shifted. The idea of doing 12-hour days and sort of eating at my desk, which historically never bothered me, all of a sudden became something I just didn't want to do. And so I started to focus on helping remove me as the bottleneck and the single point of failure in the company and making it more saleable. I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time. I was trying to take the reliance off me, hiring, delegating, and doing the things to make it run without me. But I started to focus on freeing my time up, stop doing customer work. And after a little while, I realized that I just wanted some more time at home. So I got myself down to what was close to a normal 9 to 5, but still wanted more time at home. So I put the company up for sale, listed it to see what, whether there was any interest, and met a really good buyer. They liked the team, liked what we did, liked what we were about and the values. And so they acquired us in April 23. And I stayed on working for them for about 18 months, making sure the company was integrated. I used the analogy of a relay race, and I had the baton in one hand and I made sure it didn't drop, when I passed it over. And then in August, so not too long back, about 5-6 months ago, I started the career break. I promised myself a year, but before my little boy goes to school, and I've got a daughter now as well, while my little one is at home, just spending some time with the family and building some memories. So yeah, at the moment, I'm not really in a leadership position, apart from, I'm servant leader to everyone in my household. But yeah, it's a bit of a 15 going on 20-year journey in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's very succinct. I'm impressed. But it always interests me that the people that I would say are leaders very often say, I'm not. unless it has something to do with work. And I think, if you have a family and then you have kids, that is the definition of leadership, I'd say. I mean, I don't know about you, but maybe that's a good segue into the sort of the how you'd see leadership, because I sort of disagree. I'd say that is the most fundamental part of leadership is, family, and it's not just one person, it's a team, and it's difficult and it's a challenge. So how do you see leadership?
I think leadership is something that you have to earn. I think it's a bit of a status. If you can inspire people to follow you, then you're a leader. Being on an org chart, in a position, having a job title is not, isn't a leader. Maybe you could call that a manager, but the reality is that there's plenty of CEOs who get ignored by the board, and the CFO's in charge or the COO's in charge, and the actual leader is the person who inspires and has got the loyalty of the people. So I see leadership as something you have to earn, a bit like respect. You can't assume that you're a leader. You have to be a leader, act like a leader, and then earn that right to be called a leader by other people. And it's a hard thing to do. Earning the respect of people rather than just having people look up to a title, look up to you as a person. So I think it's about building trust, respect, and then ultimately the desire for people to follow you. And that's something which you do have to put a lot of work and effort into to earn, rather than just be given a job or sign a contract, be awarded a position.
When you say it's hard to do, what would be something, a sort of a concrete example where you'd say that's hard to do? Because building trust, I'm sure. So I've been through and built teams before, so I understand that. But if somebody doesn't, what would that sort of concrete look like when you're saying it's hard to do? Maybe an example somebody could relate to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of examples spring to mind. One is really early on in my career. I was given my first team. I think it was 9 people. I was running the project management office in the engineering company. But I was very young. I was in my early 20s, and some of the team were in their 40s and 50s. And so, in week 1, I heard one of them a couple of desks down going, "Oh, he's just a kid. What does he know?" Which means that although I technically was the team leader of that team, I didn't, command a leadership position at that point. And I don't think that you should just listen to someone because they walk in and say, I'm above you in an org chart. I think you should listen to them, you should respect them, behave appropriately. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you should believe everything they say, because just because someone's more senior doesn't mean that they're more experienced or more knowledgeable or have the right answer. And instead, I had to work quite hard to build a relationship with these people, show that I was willing to get stuck in, lead, support them, enable them, empower them to be able to do what they did, listen to them because they had some great ideas of how things could change and we could get better and faster and improve processes within that particular team. And you get to the point where people do respect you and will listen to you, not because they have to, but because they want to. When I left, the person who said that, I hope you don't mind the very soft language. He said, "When you came in, I thought you were a donkey. Now you're leaving. You are an ass, but I'd definitely work for you again." And that was a year or two later. And that just made me laugh. And I'd built a relationship with him where he could say that because, as long as we were doing our work, there wasn't a particularly formal, it wasn't a formal team. Everyone was just in it together. And that was something which he wouldn't have said to me the day I joined, or the week I joined. He didn't have enough respect to say that to my face at the start, but he did at the end. I like that. I feel like I earned his respect, and I don't think I was a leader on day one, but I think in that particular team towards the end, before I moved on to a new role, then I was. I think that's the key. And then the other one is, one of the things Job has found is lead by example isn't just a set of words, it's something you have to do. And so if people don't necessarily understand why you're doing something up front, you have to take the time to show them and tell them why, but actually show them what you're doing and how it helps. And if you're willing to do what you say, and behave the way you say you're going to behave, and actually don't say I'm the leader, therefore you do this thing. Say, come on, let's go and do it together. Let's tackle this problem together, and show people that your approach, the recommendations you make, have some meaning behind them. You're not just saying it. You're saying it because you've done it before. You said got the scars, and help people understand there's a different way of doing things. And that trust and respect. They'll value your opinion, and they'll trust that you're not just telling them to do something for the sake of it, because you've gone and done it together. And so being able to be, not just a leader in the traditional sense, but actually someone who stood shoulder to shoulder with them at the time when, you're tackling a problem together, overcoming a challenge. I think that's something which really helps to earn that trust and respect from a team. Whether it's a brand new team that a customer team, for example, where we've, as a consultancy, gone in and been working with them. We don't just go and say, you should do this. We say, come on, let's try this for this reason. The aim of it is to, save this much time or money, but let's do a really small pilot together and we'll show it. And you work as an extension of that team. You come into a team in a leadership or, quasi leadership role, but you don't just say, I'm the boss, do this, or I'm the leader, do that. You say, come on, let's do this together. I think that working with people, that you earn that respect. And as I say, I don't think leadership's something that you can just assume, and even with a job title, leadership's something that you have and you earn.
So it sounds to me like the journey is almost more important than the destination.
Yeah, that's how you get there, but also it's how you build the relationships with the people so that they see you as their leader in whatever guise that is. And yeah, I've never assumed that I'm someone's leader because of, as I say, and I know Chart's a great example, or because I've been told I'm the project manager on a project, or my team are going into, to run something for a customer, for example. We don't assume we're the leaders. We say we are a team. Collectively, everyone's opinion means as much as each other's, and we'll all work through this together. We'll still take full accountability for the success or the outcome, and say if it goes wrong, it's on us. If it goes well, truthfully, it's probably on you. Share the credit and also comfortably accept the blame, depending on the circumstances. But really go in and build that trust. Build the relationships with the people and earn their respect rather than just assuming.
I think there was a good thing a friend of mine once said, it's the mother of all, I'll not use the F word, but the mother of all messes is the assuming things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you totally. That's certainly true. I suppose that's a nice segue into what would you say are some of the upsides for leadership? Some things that you've, over that journey that you've just expressed, what would you say are the upsides? Because a lot of people associate accountability with possibly the negative.
And I think you have to be accountable. That's part of of earning that respect and the trust. I think the upsides undoubtedly are building a great team, but also then building the loyalty within that team, not just necessarily towards me as a leader, but towards each other. So you're creating an environment where people feel that they want to succeed and they want to get stuck in. And we always said, customers and team are what's important. So, when we were growing as a business before we were acquired, we didn't really care about the numbers. We were growing rapidly, and we grew to like 40 people or so over 7 years. So it was a quick growth, but we weren't looking at that. We were measuring ourselves on how happy are the customers. And there were times when customers would either drop a grenade in, a really successful project, and then a month before you go live, they say, "Oh, we actually needed this." And everyone gets together and goes, "Can we do it?" And you figure you can do it. It's going to be a tough month for everyone, but you can do it. It can be done. So we'd say yes. Let's do it together, and everyone shoulder to shoulder. And there wasn't any, that's not my job. None of that. People just wanted it to succeed, and they were willing to cover for each other and get involved. And I'm building a team that that shares that culture, shares those values, and all wants to succeed together. there's something that I'm incredibly proud of the team that I built and the company that I'd handed over to the company that acquired it. And I think really being able to look at a team that's shares the same values, knows what's important, has each other's back, works together, and has got that loyalty to you and each other. I think that's priceless, and that's probably the thing I was most proud of across like my entire professional career to date.
So it was, oddly enough, Steve Jobs, I think, said the same thing about Apple before he croaked. Not exactly well known for being a nice person, but he was asked what he was most proud of, and he said the team that he'd built, which I think is an interesting thing, because if you look at the profitability of Apple, it's still profitable compared to some other really big businesses out there. So if you look at things like profitability of Uber, I think it's minus 20% or something like that. And Apple's plus 24, which is, considering how old they are and how long they've been around, it does boil down to that. I think that one basic that you've just mentioned. And
it's interesting because I've had a chance to learn from loads of incredible leaders. Some really bad ones as well, and let one not. But I've been really fortunate, and I like to approach life as I'm not the smartest person in the room. There's always something to learn, and I like learning, and so being able to watch other people and understand or try to figure out what makes them successful in especially leadership. I'm really fortunate to be able to work under some great people and and watch what they do and say study it, just listen and watch and then try and emulate some of that, and equally see people who don't necessarily behave the right way in leadership positions and see some of the poor outcomes they've managed to get, or the fact that people leave and they don't feel happy or safe. And so I think learning from others is really important.
Do you think that, I know that my grandfather once told me when I asked him what a leader was as a kid, because I was quite young, and I asked him what it meant, the actual word. I was like a toddler in quotes, and he said, "You'll know when you get there." which never made sense to me for a long time, until I finally did get there, and I thought, yeah, now I know what he's talking about. But everybody's got a definition, but you've obviously mentioned working together, that's the rewarding thing, the team itself. But if you then had to pick something, so okay, there's a downside to all of this, what would that look like? And you're not allowed to say accountability.
No, so when you do the personality, I will answer the question. When you do like the personality types and the all of the different the like strength development index or DISC or Myers-Briggs, some of those. I naturally am bright red in insights or DISC or SDI, or I'm one of the people who wants to just get stuff done when it comes to like the Myers-Briggs, and I think those methodologies, and there's a free one called 16 Personalities, which is pretty good. You have to pay for like the full textbook, but you can go on and take the quiz and get your results. I think it's really useful for self-awareness. And I naturally at the start just wanted to get stuff done, get stuck in, be a bit of a bull in a china shop. So when you say accountability is one of those things, I actually don't mind that. I found that being in a position where it's sink or swim, and you say, okay, I will make this happen, and then you're working really hard to make that happen, actually inspires other people around you. If you take on a challenge and say, we will make this happen for you, especially to customers, they respect you for it, and also the team. Say inspired might be the wrong word, but they tend to rise to the challenge a bit, and people see that is a project or program. It's not just another transformation that might or might not work. It's the one that's starting to get some momentum and make things happen. And being in that position, I think you can't be scared of accountability. So I think accountability is a good thing because, as I said, it helps you to earn the respect of those around you, which is an important part of being a leader. So and being self-aware is another important part of being a leader as well, because I used to be a little bit too bull in a china shop and wouldn't always, wait for people to, to come around. People who needed a bit more time of thinking and, analysing. And learning to moderate that and become better engaged in communicating with people was a really important part of the first 10 years of my career. Going from being a bit too assertive and being, taking confidence and making it more of a, an assertive thing was a lesson that I had to learn. I'm sorry, flipping that in reverse and go back to having confidence in the outcome. So yeah, I think accountability is really, really important for a leader, and it's not the bit which I like the least. I think on a personal level, I care deeply for my team, and I describe my first company as as my first baby, and the team of people. I'm still friends with many of them now, even though I've stepped away for 6 months. They all trusted me and moved over as part of the acquisition as well. We didn't lose people. They came and joined the new company, and vast majority is still there. Some of them have moved into other roles within the company as well. So they chose to do that, and I've got a really strong bond with the team. It's the thing I was most proud of. And so when you're in a position where there's challenges that your team have, I think it's really tough as a leader. So I've had a couple of unfortunate instances where some of the team had, say, medical circumstances or family issues, which just meant that they were unable to do what we needed from a company perspective. And that truthfully didn't matter to me because, the team was more important. I said more important than the numbers, so we'd look to just give them the time to go and sort whatever they needed to sort. And I both felt that it was quite tough that I couldn't take that problem off them, because that's something which I quite like to do. People I care deeply for, but also then would probably find myself getting a bit too close, taking what they were doing, say for a customer project, and instead of delegating that to someone else, I would take that problem off them, step into that customer role, and probably do their job and my job at the same time for a little while. And quite often, one of the challenges I've seen, and I suppose it's a personal challenge, not necessarily it's a leadership challenge, was taking that leadership role really seriously, and then in doing so, taking on a bit too much. Feeling that personal accountability both to the team and also the outcome that we would deliver him, and then doing a lot, doing my own role as managing director, bringing on new customers and keeping everything running well, but also then would go in and dive into a customer project and spend a month or 2 months doing that as well. I think being able to when you are a leader, when you feel like a leader and you behave like a leader, sometimes you can do that at a personal cost. And so I think that's one of those challenges where being able to go, I should delegate this to this other member of the team. And yes, it'll be a bit tough for them, but it won't be anywhere near as much as me trying to juggle two things. That's something which I've never been very good at. And I think also firing people. I think that's just a horrible thing when you run a team, when you run, as a manager and as a leader, whether it's someone who's come in, hasn't performed and go on probation period, or whether it's someone you've worked with for a while and they stop performing. I've never had a problem firing people who don't align on sort of behaviors. I think you need to keep a consistent culture and set of behaviors as a leader. So I'm quick to fire if someone actively goes against our culture as a team and chooses to behave in a way that we don't accept. But when it comes to performance, I've probably found it really difficult to fire people and let them go, even if I've known that they haven't performed. I've kept them on for 6 months longer than I should have, and that's not something which necessarily always helps the team. That's a difficult thing as leadership, where you take a bit of short-term pain, but it actually is a lot of long-term gain. So I find, the team is the thing that I keep coming back to, and wanting to put my arms around them is something which you can't always do, but also when you've got the wrong person in the team, getting rid of them, that's a real challenge.
When you say it's a real challenge, do you find it's not seeing that yourself, or is it something else? So like almost because the people are the right cultural fit and they've got, in quotes, the right skills. So how do you recognize that?
I've been really fortunate to work with a lot of high performing people, and when we grew as a company, we hired primarily by recommendation, personal recommendation. So I had a great network of people that I'd worked with as a program manager and ultimately running an IT portfolio. So really good people who delivered complex IT projects, programs, and transformation. So I knew loads of great people and started to hire from people I knew. By extension, we started to hire from who they knew when I ran out of my network. And so we got a really good network of good people. And so the core of the team was really, it was really high performing. And I was lucky that the company I'd worked for previously had hired lots of people, and of the 100 they'd hired, 10 of them were superstars, and there was probably equally 10 the other side who couldn't deliver a pizza, never mind the project. So that being able to know that, recognize it, it was important, and it allowed us to grow because we commanded that customer trust. So we built this nucleus of really, really great people, and then bringing on someone who's okay. That wasn't, they aligned on culture, they behaved the right way, they had the right attitude, they shared the values, but they just didn't necessarily deliver as well. That it was okay, it wasn't great. And people can sometimes go, oh, well, we can take our foot off the pedal. If that becomes acceptable or normal, that can actually damage the team. And so it wasn't to say that we'd made terrible hires or we brought people on who were a bad fit. It was more, we defined ourselves against a certain set of performance, and that we all wanted to be on our A game. And sometimes if someone was not performing that way, and I didn't mean someone who was less senior, so more of some of the junior consultants who were learning. I meant more of the you had three people in the same role and one of them just wasn't pulling the same weight as the other two. That causes friction, and it's sometimes really important to address that. But as I say, when you build a team of people that you care about, that becomes quite a you have to do it, and I do, but that's one of the downsides when you do it.
I remember once I had to do a 365 review for people, and of course with those things somebody's always got to come out the loser, which I detested, because I had a group of people around me that were pretty much 9s and 10s, and I had to go and say, okay, someone else is a 6, which I just couldn't understand that. So why are we doing that to people when we've got such fantastic people? And I'm telling you, they're all 9s and 10s. Why in God's name do I need to name one a 6 when I know they're not? Couldn't change it because it was such a large company. But that's my experience of that. Okay, and with that, I think that's a good segue into sort of if somebody is thinking about doing this, how would you suggest that someone becomes a leader? If they are going to choose, make that decision, say, right, okay, I want to become a leader. What would you say are the best steps? I mean, I'm 20 odd years older than you are, so my steps are completely different than yours. So, or maybe not. We'll find out in a second.
I think there's no substitute to doing it. So, as I said, a leader isn't someone who's got a job title. A leader is someone who puts themselves into a position to lead the team. So, for someone who wants to be a leader, I'd say find opportunities to lead. Some people choose to do it outside of the professional career, but if we're talking a work context, there might be a project or some initiative that's going on where people can volunteer to take a leading role, a bit of a stretch assignment, and you might end up leading just for half a day a week a team of your peers. It's very much a matrix organization, but you can go in and you set a vision and you say how quickly we need to achieve the outcome. You can help inspire people to deliver whatever that is and do it. And just accept that you're probably going to get it wrong. I definitely got it wrong along the way a fair few times. I described about being a little bit too bordering arrogance, really, over confidence, and and just do it and learn. And if you do it, and then you reflect on, did you do it well? Did you enhance the relationships with these people? Did you, tread on some toes, maybe upset some other people? Did everybody value that leadership, or did people not? You'll get a bit of a sense of what type of leader you are. And there's lots of different leadership styles, like pace setter and visionary and servant leadership and things. And they're useful as I would like to be this type of leader, sort of guide and light. But actually, you don't know what sort of leader you are until you lead. Being aware of who you are as a person helps, and some of the the frameworks I mentioned, which are just useful. You get a report and it'll tell you, I don't know, your colours, or I don't know what your spirit animal is. For I'm guessing for some of them, it's that's not what's important. What's important is the second and third page, which says, and if someone's like this, you should engage with them in this way, and if someone is naturally like this, engage with them in that way. And it teaches you how you can engage with people better, what your natural tendencies are and your strengths, but also, because you're probably going to keep being strong in that, your weaknesses, and take those weaknesses and then learn how to address some of those and bridge some of those gaps. And then next time you lead, it might be more formally through career. It might be something outside of a hobby, running a football team or something. But next time you do it, be conscious of those weaknesses and then try and get better at it. And it's like any other muscle. The more you use it, the better it gets. And so leadership is one of those things where it'll take some time, and it's hard to be a leader, and it's hard for someone to look at you and say, I need a decision, or what do we do? That is such an open-ended question. And if people are looking at you, it's a tough place to be, but you're more and more comfortable in that position the more times you've been asked that question. So I just do it. You can look at books, watch YouTube videos, and do learn. I do think it's vital to learn, but understand where you're starting from and understand where you want to be, and then learn in that direction. Don't just read everything. Instead, try it, get a feel for where you are, get an idea of the type of leader you want to be, and then work towards that, rather than just
and find out whether it actually fits for you as a human being.
That'd be my approach. And the other one is don't pretend. People see straight through you. If you pretend that you've been leading for 10 years and you've never done it, it won't work. Just go in and be honest. In my experience, people want others to succeed. And so if you go in and say, look, this is my first time in this role, I've volunteered as a stretch assignment to run this project because I would like to, to work on my leadership skills. I'm open to feedback, and everyone's voice counts. Let's do it. I think people will respect that more than I'm your leader and pretending like you've got 10, 20 years worth of experience. So just be honest, be yourself, and be comfortable to be a tiny bit vulnerable as well. It endears people to you, and they will help you, and it'll be easier to lead.
Yeah, I think my father it was, taught me that, but he used to clip me around the back of the head when I was doing stuff like that. He was slightly more direct when we're talking about feedback. Okay, that sort of also answered, how you'd suggest you create leaders, I suppose, because that's you'd said, right, okay, find out who you are, what you are, try and do it in a sort of a smaller, less riskier environment, and then get feedback from the people that you're actually working with. So that, I presume, would be your way of then also creating leaders. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
because I mean, you said you got to the point where you said, right, okay, we've put the business up for sale, and then it becomes really serious about you not being there and somebody else being able to do it. So
yeah, I think really when you create a leader, there's two sides to it. One is, how does someone become a leader, as we said, and the other one is, how do you create leaders? I think what you have to do is create a safe space and allow people the opportunity to go in and lead. And that might be that you have a conversation with someone in the the PDR, the 360 review, whatever the quarterly or biannual reviews are, and if they aspire to be a leader, then you should find opportunities for that. And we did with our teams. For some of our less seasoned consultants, we quite happily deploy them in a team of 3, as someone who was there to help the other two who were more seasoned. And if that went well and they showed a bit of promise and they said, I would like to be a leader, then we'd put them into a project and they would be the lead consultant. And we'd put in either a bit more of our, there's myself and then a leadership team and then all of the consultants by the end. And we might give them a little bit more one-to-one cover and support by one of the leadership team, or it might well be that we put one of the more senior consultants who typically is the lead consultant and put them as part of that team. And what we're doing is we're giving them the opportunity to try it. As I say, experience is so valuable. I think in life, there's two currencies, there's experience and coin. And quite often people who coin as in money, quite often people will do a job for a while before they get the job, and then they get the money. But actually getting the experience of doing something, stepping up while someone's on maternity leave or something like that, doing a role and or acting as in our case a lead consultant, then once they've proven it and done it, there's no reason why you can't say yes, you are now a lead consultant, and therefore they can receive all of the reward that comes with that. But a lot of people are they view it as, I'm not doing that because I'm only paid this much, not that much to do that thing. But actually, if you put yourself out there, step into that role, do it, then you've proven that you can do it. So whether it's the next job comes along, or whether it's the next opportunity for something really interesting, with say board level visibility comes up, you've proven that you're a reliable set of hands, you can lead. And so doing that and getting the experience is really valuable, both from a personal development perspective, but also it tends to lead to the other piece, which is you find more opportunities to then get to progress or take those skills and use them in other areas. So I think I always looked at it as, especially going through my career where I was quite young in some of the roles I had, and I knew I was being paid far less than all of the people at the same job title either side of me, but I didn't see it that way. I just saw it as I'm getting all of this good experience, that means I can then take the next step sooner. And the people I've seen who behave like that and see it that way, they fly through, the ranks, and their careers really do progress and accelerate. Whereas the people who take it as, I'm not doing it until I've got all of the package, tend to be, it's a slower trajectory for them. So I think if you're building a leader, create the environment for them to lead. Make sure they've got that support, be it a safety net in that you can parachute, someone in if it goes wrong. A half-hour daily touch point where they can ask for your opinion or whatever it is that they need, but give them the environment where they can lead, and also make sure they're supported. So it's not about having someone fail; it's about allowing them to do it and prove they can do it without risking the key outcome. For us, it was customer projects. We'd never do that with the risk that the customer project wasn't going to be delivered. We'd always put a bit of extra support for people on the first time. But
so you'd have some safety rules in place.
Yeah, but people delight you, and they, no one goes to work to do a bad job. And if people feel like you're treating them with respect, and you say to them, "This is really important. This is your opportunity. Please, please do your best," then people will, in my opinion and experience, often do their best, and you'd be really pleased with the results. So, it's. I didn't feel like we were doing anything massively risky, but we also wanted to build people up, give them the confidence and the capability, put them in the uncomfortable positions for an hour a day, not for 8 hours a day. Give them that so they could walk into that leadership role, not that they felt that they'd fallen into it and didn't know where to look, or that they were pushed into it.
Yeah. I think it's that safe space, isn't it? And then just be treating everybody like an adult. I think that's the thing that I noticed made a difference. And surprisingly enough, no matter what age somebody is, once they get past their teenage years, you're talking to an adult. And when you treat people like adults, oddly enough, 99% of the people I've ever met act like adults. There's obviously children in there sometimes, and it can depend on what's going on at home or in family or whatever. If that changes, then very often you'd say, okay, right, it's not them, it's something that's happening outside, and you ask that question, don't you? And with that, I suppose that leads nicely on to, is there anything I should be asking that I haven't asked?
I think no. I think leadership, it's quite personal. Everybody's style is slightly different, and the way they approach it is different. And so, I think the people who are watching, who are wanting to learn about being a leader, really, once they've tried it, they'll have a whole raft of questions about how they can change things or do things differently. And really, I think that those questions come from the person once they've tried it, and they want to get better at certain things. So no, I don't think so. And one thing I'd like to say is culture is vital, and as a leader, it's something that you can't afford not to invest in. And invest, quite often means time, because you set the values that the team align to and subscribe to, and you hire or even bring, whether it's a matrix, build a team of people who subscribe to those values. You set the behaviors. How do we expect people to act? What's important? What gets prioritized? What do we allow? I tend to have a fairly informal approach at my team. The behaviors, people can joke and laugh and stuff, but if anything's going to risk the customer being happy, then that's like a non-negotiable in our mind. And that was sort of the the behaviors we had. But we also never let anyone feel uncomfortable. So there's we set as a team, these are the behaviors that we do and don't allow, what we expect. And then things like language as well, and even habits. Your daily meetings or your weekly meetings, they shouldn't be something where people might want to come to if they can be bothered. That should be a look. Do you know what? We only meet for 15 minutes or half an hour a week, but everyone comes, everyone contributes, and that becomes a habit. It's a behavior that gets reinforced over time, and you set these things and they become little mini rituals, and you create a culture of people who know what's expected, how you as a team tend to work. They know why you're doing what you do, and it's really important because that is a good barometer for when someone joins or doesn't join, whether it's going to be a good success. Is someone, do they align to the values? Do they behave the same way you do? Do they use completely different language that you're maybe not comfortable with? And that investing in culture as a leader is really important, because if you get that wrong, you won't have a happy team. They won't feel safe. They won't feel empowered. They won't understand, what you are about as a team. And that could be any team, from Liverpool. And, I think Jurgen Klopp is an incredible leader. And I've watched a lot of the stuff which he's done.
Sorry, could you just repeat the name? I missed that.
Jurgen Klopp, the ex-Liverpool manager. But he was, he inspired the team to do really well. Not based on the results, but it was, the way that he would treat people, the culture he created in the environment. And so he created that safe space, and it's something which I think is really important. Build a culture and set out, this is our culture, this is who we are, what we're about in your team. And that can be really small teams from, you're the coach of a football team with a load of kids who you've got a Sunday team, and you say, we don't accept bad language here. We don't accept blame. If someone misses a penalty, then you go up and you say, do you know what, you'll do better next week. That's a cultural thing. That's not, that people say blame culture or I was scared to speak up, or, that's based on the leadership setting the culture. Like, you have to set a culture. And we had ours, and I've got strong views on what the right and wrong one is, but it is different depending on everyone's, circumstances. But yeah, you should really focus on culture. And I don't think it's a question you should ask necessarily, but it's certainly something which I don't feel like I put across how strongly I felt about it.
I would agree. I think it's the water you're swimming, and without that, nobody can breathe if you're a fish. So the last one is is there anything that people typically get wrong in your industry? I'll keep my trap shut. Otherwise, we'll hit the hard stop quickly.
I don't think typically, but one thing which I often say is people focus on what they're doing, not why they're doing it a lot of the time. And even leaders, they don't understand why they're doing the thing that they're doing. And an example, we had a customer who had just gone through a transformation we'd helped them with, and then they engaged for a second piece of work, and they asked us to automate a process or help them automate the process because they wanted to save some cost. And after a couple of days, one of our team challenged and said, "You probably don't need that process anymore. With your new way of working, why don't you just quite literally, take this out of the equation? Don't do it because it's not adding any value anymore. You don't run that report anymore. You don't want that information. This is we always used to do it. Ask, not a we're thinking of the future." And quite often people don't take that step back and challenge why they're being asked to do things. And leaders as well. If your chief exec tells you, I want you to do this, it's hard to say why. What are we trying to achieve? They'll sometimes people tell you what to do, not the outcome that they want or the why behind it. And so being able to take a step back and actually challenge upwards quite often as a leader, and say why are we doing it? Is it to save some money? Is it to improve customer experience or employee experience? Is it to speed up what we do? Is it to deliver things faster? What is it that we're trying to achieve? Because once you understand what you're trying to achieve, there's often better ways of doing it. So instead of focusing on what you're being asked to do, focus on the outcome and why you're doing it, and then take an hour to just challenge back and go, if we could achieve that outcome in a cheaper way or a better way or a faster way or a different way, would that be acceptable? And often the answer is yes, but many times people don't. They receive an instruction, even if they're director level, but it's come from above, and they go, we have to do X, not we want to achieve Y. And that's a really big distinction. So taking that time to just pause, reflect, do I understand why we're doing it? And if you don't, ask, and in a constructive way. And if you're speaking to your chief exec, be polite, but challenge around the why. That's something which I don't feel like people do, or in my experience, having seen it, I just don't feel like people do enough of. And some people do
what the outcome should be.
Yeah, rather than what the task is, focus on the outcome that you're looking at. That's something which we've helped customers. We had an example with a customer that wanted us to do a Teams rollout years ago, pre-pandemic, and I asked the question. We were quite small at the time, so it was a big project for us. And I asked the question of, well, why do you want Teams? And they said they wanted to use video. They wanted video calls. They wanted people on video because they thought it would be really important. And it was a cultural shift, actually. This is the new norm, video enabled meetings. And we had a quick look, and we found that the network just wasn't anywhere near. This was back in the days when you weren't on the cloud. It wasn't robust enough to be able to handle Teams. And they had limited connections in and out of their environment. So we said you'd have everyone on video, but they'd have red triangles, and the experience wouldn't be great. So actually, no, we aren't gonna, or we don't want to run a project for you to implement Teams at the moment. Ask us in 12 months, or why don't we help you to do a network improvement project? Find your bottlenecks, improve them. So to get rid of the.
So an honest answer to the solution.
And they had a company that did all that outsourced networking, so they went and gave them a bit of a prod, and we never actually did that piece of work, but we did another piece of work 6 months later. But actually, the dishonest thing to do would have been, brilliant. I'll have a nice, I'll have a nice project, and we'll keep a few of our team busy for 6-12 months. It's a very large organization. There were tens of thousands of people, so it would have been a brilliant piece of work, but we wouldn't have felt good doing it. And and that's an example where it actually cost us, but it was the right thing to do, and that was once again respected. That we challenged them. We asked what they wanted to achieve. It wasn't just we want 30,000 people on Teams. It was we want everyone to be able to work collaboratively using video. That's a very, very different thing.
I find that really interesting because the odd thing that always gets me is as business owners, if we're looking to provide a solution, what we don't look at is the end outcome. And that when we're talking about that could be that people will tell other people they know 10 times more that didn't work, even if it's not your fault. The fact that you actually said that and said, right, okay, we think that's not a good idea, that had, I would have guessed, a long-term plus benefit where people are actually mentioning you in a good sense, and well, these guys are that honest that they said, no, we can't do that. And as it turns out, they were right. And then if somebody says, are you looking for somebody? Then your name's going to get mentioned. Whereas I think a lot of people will just look at the short term and not necessarily go and say, right, okay, in the long term, that is a better attitude.
I completely agree.
And I'm just going to remind you of your hard stop.
I'll tell you one thing, and then we wind down. The inverse of what you just said is true as well. So we were asked for a customer to run an RFP for a large IT service management solution. And we'll running the program to implement it as well. But during the sales process, it's a big organization with lots of procurement process and compliance. We ran a really thorough RFP and down select. And when we invited one of the vendors in, so we're down to 3 or 4, maybe, I forget. I think it was the last 3. And we invited one of them in, and the salesperson come in, put some slides up, told us how great their software was, all the things it would do for us, and quite literally gave us the full sales pitch. And after an hour, I said, that's brilliant, but can I ask what's our requirement? And he just couldn't answer. And everyone in our room, everyone in the team that I was as program manager at the time, all looked at each other and realized that we just disqualified a vendor because they weren't trying to help us to get the best solution to meet our requirements. They were trying to tell us why theirs is the best and all the bells and whistles. And I knew enough about the technical content of what was being said that I could make that challenge. And if you didn't understand, maybe you're like the procurement person in the room, that they were assuming that we'd provide that challenge. So instantly they realized that the way that person behaved wasn't the way that we wanted the partner for quite a large, it was a multi-million-pound piece of work in the end. That wasn't the partner that we wanted. And I say we because I was acting as an extension of the customer team, one of our early customers, but that instantly turned off everyone in our team. We still scored it all properly. We still scored it, transparently. But the reality is that can we trust this partner to have our back for the next however many months while we're doing the implementation? The trust was just gone, and so they didn't score the best in the formal scoring. But already, there was a leaning towards the one that did win because they came in and said, "Look, ours can do all this stuff, but actually, what's important to you?" And that is completely different as a style. That was the why. They wanted to understand why we were doing it. I think that's key. So you're right, but equally, it's bad on the inverse when people don't do that. So I think that's a really important quality.
Well, with that's almost perfectly on time. I'll make sure you get away a bit early. I know, hard stop it with kids is slightly different. So thank you very much for your time. So it's been a pleasure. We'll keep in touch, and if there's anything else or if somebody comes to me, would you like to let them get in touch with you, email or LinkedIn, or what's preferable for you?
You more than welcome to share my LinkedIn, with this when it goes out, and people can contact me on LinkedIn. Is probably the easiest. I'm, as I say, currently a stay-at-home dad, which means that I'm not, looking at any work email addresses at the moment and stuff. So, but I'm happy. Happy to help reply to a couple of messages if people have got questions and things. And then who knows, in 6 months or something like that, maybe I'll have a new work related email that I probably want to share. But there's no
that's fine.
Nothing to promote at the moment, that's for sure.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much for your time, Dan. Really appreciate it. Have a good Monday.
Cheers. You too. Bye.
Bye. Oops.